Good evening and welcome to Empowerment with Elysia. I'm your host, and tonight I have the great pleasure of having one of our local business owners on, Ada Haensel. She is a speech language pathologist, as some of you may know as speech therapist. She is also an equine expert. She started her really cool new business with the name of which I absolutely love, which is Speaking of Horses, here in the Charlottesville area, where she is integrating speech therapy with working with kids and horses, which is just a really beautiful thing to get to synergetically bring together. On tonight's show, we are going to be talking about hippotherapy, what it is and what it isn't, service dogs versus therapy dogs, and some neurological research about the implications of all of that on horses and with dogs. So Ada, thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And even though you're new to the field, it's just so much you get to bring to it, I think, with a fresh perspective, like new research and really like that sort of go-getter attitude while you're bringing this to the community. So tell us a little bit more about your story.
Yeah, so I'm definitely young. I graduated from UVA in 2021 and I'm still learning. And I think that having an open mindset really sets me apart from some of my peers. I am willing to learn from anybody and everybody, and I am not afraid of criticism. I think that's how people get better. So I started Speaking of Horses because when I was young, I was diagnosed with dyslexia and severe anxiety, but the therapy that I received was in small rooms with no windows and white walls. And it was very mundane and rote. And so now I want children to have a more engaging experience. And my passion has always been animals, specifically horses. But I also love dogs. You can see my dog behind me. That is Blue. He's actually my service dog as well, for my panic disorder. And so I have created Speaking of Horses to offer speech therapy to children in the Charlottesville area while incorporating horses. So I'm offering speech therapy, but incorporating horses into the speech therapy.
All of which is great. And I'm glad that you brought up just what you went through in regards to dyslexia and that experience and why, like the connection point, right? And I think a lot more people these days can relate to anxiety.
Yes.
What we can do to help that, and be it working with dogs or working with horses. And so can you explain to our audience perhaps how working with either dogs or horses can help with anxiety in particular?
Dogs slow our heart rates down all in general. Horses, I assume, would too, but I know there's research that shows that dogs will slow our heart rates down. My dog is, and that's for any dog and anybody, but my dog is specifically trained as a service dog to mitigate my disability, which is a panic disorder. And so he will alert me about 10 minutes before I have a panic attack. And then he performs deep pressure therapy on my chest, where he slows down his breathing and he stops panting so that I can match my breathing to his breathing.
Amazing.
Yeah. And but like apart from that's his trained task, but apart from that, it's really helped with social anxiety too, because he's the best icebreaker in the world. And I had him all through college. And so everybody knew Blue, and I was kind of Blue's person, but it helped me make a lot of friends. Just even if it's a pet dog, you can make friends by going to the dog park and you have a common topic to talk about, how much you love dogs. And so he's really helped me personally, but I also see the implications for, just pets as well. And, there is a difference between service dogs, therapy dogs, emotional support dogs, and pets. And I think that all of them have therapeutic benefits. But legally, there are differences between the three like helping dog categories.
Well, let's just jump right into it. So
yes.
Specifically with the service dogs and therapy dogs.
Yeah, so service dogs are they must perform a task to help mitigate a disability. And they're trained specifically for a handler. However, therapy dogs are trained to go into specific situations such as nursing homes, hospitals, and actually Blue's both. He's both a therapy dog and a service dog. And so he used to volunteer before the pandemic at the UVA Children's Hospital.
Oh, so sweet.
Yeah, and he loved it, but it just became too much of a health risk with seeing my other clients
Sure.
to go into an environment like that. But he loved it. He loved to jump in the beds with the kids and cuddle, and he's really good at it. But he's also good at his new job as kind of being my assistant to speech therapy. So
Yeah, so that's his new role as a therapy dog.
yeah. So, but the main difference is that service dogs have public access and therapy dogs do not. They must be approved to access these specific locations. Whereas Blue can go anywhere the general public can go because he's a service dog.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I'd be interested from the standpoint of conflict. Like a lot of people struggle with conflict, especially if you already have some sort of anxiety. And so then people are like, see your dog and they love dogs and Blue's super cute. And they're like, I want to pet him, but you're not supposed to pet service dogs when they're working. So how is that something that you work through?
So for me, it's helpful to have people approach me. It helps me kind of break that barrier, but I've definitely been in situations where it's not necessarily appropriate if I'm really struggling with anxiety at that moment, or if I need to be doing something else and I can't stop for that moment and kind of entertain like another person and engage them with my service dog. But I kind of have come up with a script that I use, which is kind of a speech therapy term, but kind of a social script where I, tell them that, I love that they have interest in him and that he is a lot of fun, but he's also working right now, and that, we can't pet him right now and we can't engage with him right now because he needs to focus on his job. Right. And so it's a balancing act for me. When I was in school, the people knew when they could approach me and when wasn't a great time to approach me. Now that I'm in more of the real world, I guess, it's a little bit more challenging, but I try to be as open to people coming up and asking questions, because usually people have good intentions when they're wanting to interact with me and my service dog.
That makes total sense. I know another woman in town who has a service dog, and she has great little stickers or whatever things on his vest. They're probably not appropriate for me to say today. But I see a dog and I instinctively always want to pet it, right?
Yeah.
And so I have to really use discipline to stop myself when I see a service dog, because I know better. Like I know I'm not supposed to pet them. It's like a half halt, you're like, yes. Oh no.
Yeah. And so Blue has been like major therapy for me, but I think, the time when I don't feel anxious at all is when I'm riding. That's the only time I feel like I can't feel anxious, because I have so many things to focus on, both mentally and physically, that there's no room for anxiety. And so I think it's really interesting that horses and dogs, and I have my other dog Shaking, I have on my lap, my little Chihuahua. But I've just found that horses kind of, first of all, they're non-judgmental. So they're not judging me for my anxiety. Although I know they feel it at times. I feel like they're able to differentiate anxiety about them versus just like my generalized anxiety, because when I'm riding them, if I'm nervous about jumping a jump, let's say, they could stop or they could not have faith in me. But if I kind of have more generalized anxiety, sometimes I can feel them like taking care of me. Where they'll like jump the jump and like go really nice and slow on the backside. So I think that, yes, my dog has been so helpful and he's amazing. I also think that horses can be just as amazing in anxiety, and just from personal experience.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. just getting to be around them and whatnot and help us with our emotional regulation and that co-regulation that happens between the horse and the human with the energetic sphere and whatnot. Which, can you talk to us a little bit about the neurological aspects of the horse?
Yeah, so when I was in undergrad, I started a research study actually with my service dog Blue. I had a professor, his name was Dr. Nicholas Barone, who let me use his lab and his it's called an FNIRS system, which is similar to an MRI system, although a cap is placed on the skull with probes in specific spots where we're kind of trying to target, and it measures oxygenization and deoxygenization in the cortex of the brain. And so he had just gotten the system, it was state of the art, and he just wanted to try it out. And he asked if any of the students in his lab had any ideas. And I said that I would like to do a study to see if therapy dogs affect speech output or speech function. And so I formulated this study where I had 3 different conditions. I had my service dog, or he was considered a therapy dog in that setting, who would be next to a participant, or we had a stuffed animal that looked just like him that would be next to the participant, or we just didn't have anything. So those were our 3 conditions. And then participants were asked to perform a verbal fluency test where I would give a letter, and the letters kind of vary in difficulty of what words you can produce that start with that letter. And so we had letters that were kind of medium difficulty. And this was tested on normal, typically developing college students. Well, normal isn't probably the best word, but typically developing college students. Sure. So they were each put through those 3 conditions. The study took about 3 hours per participant. So even the time alone sitting in that chair with a cap on was pretty stressful, just that amount of time. But a bunch of studies have shown that executive function increases and language production increases around therapy animals. But we're the only study to show.
Hold on a second. Okay. Just for people out there who don't understand what executive function is, can you break that down a little bit?
Yeah, so executive function is when we use our prefrontal cortex, so the front of our brains that other animals don't have, in order to kind of think through things and problem solve a little bit more. And so where was I going? So there
was the executive function, and then you're talking about how you were the only study that.
Yes, we were the only study. Yeah, we were the only study that showed the neurological reason why therapy dogs are helpful. And so what we found was that the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which is a big way of saying the side of your brain towards the front, was active only when the therapy dog was present. So even when the stuffed animal was there, this area did not light up and did not show the oxygenization. But when the therapy dog was present, we saw the connection between executive function, which is in the prefrontal cortex, and then there was a limbic loop. A limbic is kind of like your emotional center, so it went down to the amygdala. And then it also went to Broca's area, which is the language center of your brain. So those areas all lit up really bright. And we were kind of shocked, actually, that there was any change. We were just trying out the system. And so we weren't really expecting any results, like any positive results necessarily. We were just kind of seeing how it was going to work and seeing if we could figure out other studies to do with the system. But because animals are so amazing, of course, certain areas of your brain would light up. Sure. So kind of the implications for this is that children with, autism or patients with aphasia, and aphasia is, when you have trouble kind of there are different types of aphasia, but when you have trouble communicating either by having blocks for your words, so or just saying words in kind of like a word salad, so that you're not conveying a clear idea even though you think that you are.
Sure. So like if somebody had a concussion that affected
Yes.
the executive portion of the brain.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so so for these people, activating this region of the brain, this can be a kind of a new activation. And so this could help them to produce more language. Obviously, this is one study and it was on 9 people. And so there could be many, many, many more research studies and longitudinal studies done. But there are a lot of studies that have gone through the American Speech and Hearing Association that do show that therapy animals and animal-assisted therapy increases performance in expressive and receptive language, or your output of language and your intake of language.
That's fantastic. And is there anywhere people could go to like see your study if they wanted to dive?
Yeah, so you can read about it on my website, which is www.speakingofhorsespllc.com. And you have to, at this point, type it into the search engine like that, because I don't have the SEOs set up very well. So it doesn't come up if you don't type it in like that.
Well, at least we have it, and we can put a
Yes.
link in later and people can find it more easily.
Yeah.
I would love to see that study done with horses when people are riding, and then working with horses at liberty, and then just like hanging out with a bunch of stuffed horses or something.
No, that would be amazing. I think the difficulty is that the person had to sit still in a chair for this. So it would be kind of figuring out a system that you can move around. And I think that there are systems that are coming out like that you can move around and figure out the brain activation. And I'm sure that, with Bluetooth and all the innovations that we have, that's, someone will come up with something like that.
Absolutely. Which I think brings us towards hippotherapy. What that is, is not.
Yeah. So hippotherapy so it can be an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, or a speech language pathologist incorporating equine movement into their speech therapy. So the American Hippotherapy Association is the governing body of this kind of school of thought. And you really have to be careful with your terminology with hippotherapy, because it is not therapeutic riding, and it's not recreational riding. It's speech therapy. And horses are kind of an additional benefit of the services. But I think that they provide a whole lot more than just, just being there. I don't think that they're just an activity. I think that they help out a whole lot more than that.
Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, so horses, there are a lot of great things that horses implement into therapy. First of all, they're just non-judgmental listeners. So, your therapist comes over and they're like, oh, you said that wrong. We got to try that again. But a horse just gives you an ability to practice without the negative kind of feedback or the criticism and correction. So children are getting practice, and the best way to learn how to talk is to talk and to be talked to. And so having that non-judgmental ear is really helpful. They're also extremely motivational. And especially for me, because I love horses, but they're just kind of out of the ordinary for some kids.
Definitely.
Yeah, some kids go to school, they come home, they play on the playground, they're with their dogs, but horses, especially for kids in the city, it's just not normal. And so that motivation, it's motivational because they get to interact with these animals while doing speech therapy. It's not as mundane and rote as some speech therapy can be, although we try to make it not be in any environment. But horses, it's already there. It's already going to be engaging and fun and exciting. And then there's also this concept of when the child is on the horse, they're getting neuromotor inputs. So the motion of the horse is going up into your brain, and it's helping to regulate sensory needs. So this is especially important to children with autism. And I mean, and all children, but children with autism is where you really see a benefit, because some children with autism are kind of overstimulated by all this new activities. And so the consistent rhythm of a nice slow horse can be really helpful in grounding those children. Whereas the opposite's true for children who are underregulated and kind of have low muscle tone and are kind of weak, that a more upbeat horse with a more concussive movement can be really beneficial in kind of engaging them through their sensory needs. And so even within hippotherapy, you can alter which horse they're on, or the speed of the gaits, or even in between gaits. Obviously you wouldn't go to a canter, but you can alternate between a walk and a trot to engage these students.
Yeah, no, that all sounds fantastic. I love getting to work with hippo. I actually thought about going into hippotherapy when I was younger. Since I've been doing medical massage for 20 years, I was like, well, maybe I should just go and become a physical therapist, so that then I can go on to become a hippotherapist, because it just made a lot of sense, and get the PATH certification, which is what you are in the process of getting. So for people out there who don't know what the PATH certification is, can you let them know?
Yeah, so the PATH certification is kind of the gold standard of therapeutic riding. They are the standard of safety and the standard of care for the horses and care for the people that are involved. And they're a really great organization. I'm currently in the process of becoming certified. My application is in, everything's ready. I just need to test now. So I'm just waiting to take that test, and then I'll be fully certified. I'm currently only offering hippotherapy through Speaking of Horses, but once I get that certification, I'll also be offering therapeutic riding.
Which is fantastic. And how many horses do you have to get to work with in this lovely process?
So I currently have 3 horses to work with, but there are, I've been discussing with some schools, opportunities to go to different schools to work with their horses as well.
Yeah, I love just the concept that there are schools here for kids that already have their own horses on site.
Yeah. Well, I think that they're the school's horses. They're not even the kids' horses. So
no, that's what I mean. Like the school has its own horses that the kids get to go ride for whatever it is, be it therapeutic riding, speech therapy.
I mean, where was that when I was growing up? I totally could have benefited.
I would have radically changed my life as a kid if that would have been something available at school.
Me too.
I think it was 15 years later or something after I left high school that they suddenly had like drill team with horses, and I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
Why did I not fight for that to be in my high school?
Exactly. I know. I was so tempted in high school to trailer my horse, over to the school and ride it around just to shock people, but
I really wanted to get to ride my ponies over to my elementary school, especially because I started riding when I was 5, and our property literally bordered, like we had a fence. We sold like 5 feet of our property for like 4 years or whatever to complete the field for the school. And so I literally could have just like hopped on my pony and like trotted down the road, and that would have been amazing.
Yeah, you would have been the coolest girl in school.
I would have been the coolest girl in school, and I had 2 ponies, so I could have just like taken other people for pony rides. Like, come on, guys, let's go have a good time. But yeah, it's just honoring where people are at and what engages them and how fun it can be, not shutting people down. Is a great way to get to go about it.
And I guess we haven't really touched on the difference between therapeutic riding and hippotherapy.
Yes.
And so so hippotherapy is speech therapy, and I have to lead with speech therapy in every aspect of what I do. Or, physical therapy or occupational therapy. Therapeutic riding is teaching riding skills to children with disabilities. And anyone can ride. I'm a firm believer in that. If you're, cleared medically and it's safe for you, anyone can ride. And, at different levels and different capabilities, but everyone can enjoy being on a horse. And so teaching the skills that I know from riding is a big passion of mine. And so I want to be able to do that in addition to offering speech therapy and helping kids progress academically and socially.
And that's wonderful. I mean, and for some people, they have like quote unquote invisible illnesses or disabilities, right? Which
Right.
anxiety definitely is one of.
Yes.
They're just like, oh, you look like you're fine. And you're just
I've gotten that before with my service dog many times. Oh, you don't look like you need a service dog. You look like you function totally fine. I'm like, I do until I don't. So
right. Yeah, it's with my 2 low back surgeries, it's every time I get on a horse, it's a risk. Like I'm technically
Right.
not supposed to ride, but
Yeah,
and so I have to face down my own anxiety in that process. But it
absolutely.
brings me so much joy, and it really does help, building strength and balance and all the things, neurological functioning. It's very important. And you have your little ribbons there if you tilt the
I
computer.
do. I also show on the A circuit with my barn. I live in a barn and I manage about 30 horse show stables. It's called Cadeau Show Stables. And we offer hunter jumper lessons and recreational riding.
So if you want to try that kind of riding, if you don't have any kind of disability that you're struggling with, you
Yes.
can still go see Ada for cool riding lessons.
Anyone can ride.
Anybody can ride. I feel like we've just burned through so many concepts. We've just been like, bang, 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 I'm out tonight.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would love to bring to the table to tell people about your own either personal journey or what you're offering with the kids and how it can benefit them and how they can find you?
I don't know. I think we've been pretty comprehensive at this point of everything that's going on right now.
Well, folks, you heard it here. So Ada can help you and your kids with or without disabilities to engage with horses, to help with speech therapy. If you have any questions about dogs, be they therapy dogs or service dogs, and what your journey might be, if you're like, I feel like I need one, but I don't necessarily know how to go about that, maybe Ada, can you help people?
Yes. So my fiance actually also trains service dogs for children with autism, and that's what we mainly focus on, but we also do other disabilities. It's, we kind of do it backwards from a lot of service dog organizations. A lot of service dog organizations kind of train their dogs at like a baseline for how they perform. We find the person first and tailor the dog to that person.
Lovely.
Not that either is right or wrong, but we just like to specify our dogs so that they're meeting the needs of individuals exactly.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think that some people are just more keen to one type than another.
Yeah.
No wrong way. So as we close, per usual, I always ask this one question, which is who inspires you in the world today?
So I had a professor in grad school who was really inspiring to me. Her name is Dr. Jane Hilton. And the compassion and empathy she shows towards all of her clients really inspires me. And I always try to have that same compassion and empathy when I work with my clients.
That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, it was so great talking with you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I appreciate you helping us bring more awareness to how horses and dogs can help people from all different walks of life.
Yeah, animals are amazing.
They are indeed. So one more time, where can people find you if they have questions?
So you can either find me on my website, which is www.speakingofhorsespllc.com, or you can email me. My email is speakingofhorsespllc@gmail.com, or you're welcome to, text me or call me. My number is 571-535-1217. So that kind of covers all my
There you go, folks. All the different ways that you can find Ada. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. And if you're interested in being on my show, you can always book a discovery call at www.globalequineaffiliates.com. So stay tuned for more. And until then, we'll see you later. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks again, Ada.
Bye.
Bye.